It's your girl Ashley. I be ballin basketball show, and today I'm gonna review the CNN documentary about Kobe's entire life, and it's called Kobe: The Making of a Legend. And it talks about his childhood in Italy, and it talks about relationship with parents, the sexual arrest case, his rise in basketball, high school to the Lakers. It talks about Vanessa and Gigibryant. It talks about his um, aspirations after the NBA. And so let's get right into it. Oh, there's three parts, and I'm going to cover all three parts. And I want you guys to like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me your favorite Kobe Bryant, moment or memory. And tell me which part of, if you watched the documentary, which part did you like best? So let's get right into it. So part one had to deal a lot with his, upbringing. And they talked a lot about his dad, Joe Bryan, right? And they talked about his pro career in Philly. He played with Philly, he played with Clippers, a little bit with Houston. But, they covered a car chase he had in Philly. And they were talking about how he went to Italy, played with different teams in Italy and France. Because, a lot of times when you're sort of like the the guy, right? And then as you get older, you're not the guy. He was more appreciated, at the ending of his career in Italy. Because, a lot of times, sometimes that happens. You're not a guy you once were in the NBA. So, if you want to play a lot, hey, go overseas. They definitely showed, a little Kobe, on the sidelines watching his dad play and being the towel boy, mopping up the floors. They showed Kobe falling in love with basketball and with his little short shorts, how they do in the olden days. Oh, and his grandparents would send him NBA VHS tapes, and that's kind of like when the love of the game started for Kobe as a kid. And he was, a loner. He didn't get invited to parties and stuff like that. And oh, going to Italy helped him learn different cultures, the different languages, and oh, they showed him a lot in the classroom too, because a lot of the people that are interviewed are former teammates of Kobe, former teachers of Kobe, former, and this is like childhood friends in the States and overseas, right? Tracy McGrady, you guys know him from, the Orlando Magic, Houston Rockets. He was interviewed a lot and he was a childhood friend and a lot of journalists. So at the end of part one, they did show like a little snippet of, okay, Kobe's mom wasn't interviewed, declined to get interviewed. Vanessa Bryant declined to get interviewed. And so that's when I was like, okay, so this is a CNN doc, but it isn't, a collaboration with the Bryant family. I was like, okay, little like, I was like, okay, fine. But, I think in every part of the documentary, you see different sides of Kobe, different dimensions. You get to know a little bit of what, like, different, sides. They sometimes people call it alter egos or dualities, or you just see complicated, dimensions, different uh side. Eventually, he goes back to United States, Lower Marion. that's the high school he grew up in. And, I knew this. And I liked that they showed a lot of different clips, a lot of different photos, a lot of different highlights, highlights that we've seen and highlights we haven't seen, right? And so I like that at an early age, he learned how to turn negative into positive, and he used the negative as fuel. So, for example, the school that he went to wasn't known for basketball. And, he would ask his friend, what are they saying about us in the newspapers and stuff like that? And his friend said, hey, they're saying, yeah, you go to that, white school that isn't really known for basketball. So sometimes it's sort of like in the NBA, when there's a young player and they're putting up a lot of numbers, but the team is losing a lot, right? know, and they say, "Oh, you're just a young player putting up good numbers on a bad team." Um, and they also talk to his high school coach and how his high school coach turned things around because Kobe was about winning. He didn't want to just put up numbers, right? So they started to win, started to sell out games. There's a camp back in the day called ABCDC camp, uh, where all the top recruits and prospects go to, and recruits were everywhere looking for Kobe. And because he started to get better, and even the high school games were sold out, and that school wasn't really known for basketball. Oh, something that I thought was interesting is they're telling the story of Kobe, but even Kobe in his English class, he's up, how they do uh, make you do speeches in class. He's up talking about his childhood, from Italy to now. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I wonder if they have that whole speech, back in the day. But I did like it because it kind of reminded me of Hoop Dreams. If you ever saw the Hoop Dreams documentary, it's very 90s feel. And that's kind of what this documentary part one reminded me of. Hoop Dreams documentary, kind of following a young ball player, not knowing what the future holds. You're just following him, right? And so it kind of definitely gave me Hoop Dreams feels. But yeah, oh, a lot of different trainers was interviewed as well. So a lot of people throughout Kobe's life. There wasn't a ton of NBA players that were interviewed. Speaking of Kobe's life, I and this is has to do with a lot of like biopics. Ray Charles biopic, right, with Jamie Foxx was amazing movie, and I feel like that they should do that for athletes too. Do a biopic because they did it with Muhammad Ali. Also, they just announced that he's gonna get a statue in this garden. It's like it's they're gonna have a garden full of icons and heroes. So like Rosa Parks, Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King. So Kobe's gonna have his own statue on there. But back to the documentary. So they also showed clips of the 1996 championship game, right? This is high school. And after they win it, he's hugging he's hugging his dad because in this part 1, you see how close Kobe Bryant is with his parents and with his sisters and with his family. And even T-Mac was going over their house and eating the breakfast and stuff. And when Kobe decided to go make that announcement to go straight from high school to the NBA, there were a lot of people that were doubting because there wasn't a ton of high schoolers doing that, you know. Even T Mac and I mean, not T Mac. T Mac went straight to high school too. Um, Kevin Garnett went straight um from high school to the NBA. But they're like Tim Duncan, Shaq, even they didn't go straight out of high school. They went multiple years in college. So there was a lot of doubters. But something that Kobe had was that confidence. And even his parents had that confidence in him, you know? And his former English teacher was saying, "Hey, she wishes that he went to college. But when she went to the championship game, she was kind of like, "Oh, okay, I see this now. I'm seeing the vision, right?" He actually had a shoe deal. I didn't know this. Kobe had a shoe deal even before he stepped foot in the NBA. Even before then, right? Because usually you get it, um, usually you get it, you know, a little bit later, but there was already commercials. There was already commercials with him wearing the shoes. And his dad was getting paid too. His dad was getting paid. And so I kind of wish that they would have talked a little bit about him getting drafted more because I do remember it's a different documentary. They were talking about Jerry West and drafting him and all the steps that it took um to draft him because he was drafted, you know, 13th, right? He wasn't drafted like top five, you know what I mean? So I wish they would have talked about that more, but they didn't. So that's something they should have talked about more, in my opinion. Um, and the 1996 draft class was, yeah, it's one of the best draft classes. It has Allen Iverson in it, and Marcus Camby, and I think Steve Nash. The list goes on and on. But I think they should have talked about that draft and the process of the Lakers picking him. But oh well. They did talk about the Hollywood scene, how Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic and right Shaq right had all these commercials and they were like the talk of the town. And they were talking about Scottie Pippen and MJ and their commercials and all of that. So Kobe, they definitely talked about Kobe being, obsessed with Jordan. And even T Mac was like, hey, Kobe, even at a young age, was like, I'm better than Jordan. Like, that is like that's deep confidence you gotta have. Kobe was not like a lot of rookies. They were talking about him because a lot of rookies, they kind of know their place in the hierarchy of things. Some vets probably was rubbed the wrong way with Kobe because Kobe had that big time confidence. He was just he felt like he was the best player on the floor, and that's how you have. That's the confidence you have to have. But you also, some rookies were like, "Whoa," and some vets were like, "Whoa," like this guy's really feeling himself. um, and so that's just his confidence that he had, and I wish I had that confidence. But they kept going back to he didn't socialize a lot. He felt isolated a lot. And they kept going back to that. They kept going back to that. And because he was so obsessed with the game. And I think that's why he wrote Dear Basketball afterwards, because basketball was like his friend. He didn't have a lot of friends, didn't socialize a lot. Basketball is his friend, right? They kept talking about that. But they also talked about his rap career. They talked about his rap career because that's sort of how he met his wife. He had a he did a song and a video with Tyra Banks. And one of the video girls was Vanessa Bryant, and they could relate to each other. And, they said that she had to stop going to high school because it was a lot. Knew that she was dating Kobe Bryant, and I guess that had a lot of attention. I did hear about different like teen artists, that had to stop going to public school and had to do homeschool, stuff like that. Um, but this is where it gets a little tricky. This is where it gets a little tricky. So he meets Vanessa Bryant. 6 months later, right, they get married. And the wedding is a mystery, right? And there was no prenup. And the parents didn't really agree with him getting married so fast, didn't agree with the no prenup thing. And I think that's where we begin to see the family start to break down because Kobe Bryant, as a kid in Italy, and then as a teenager in, high school, is different from the Kobe Bryant playing for the LA Lakers. Because he said, and they showed a lot of old clips, and even Kobe was like his parents still think he's a little kid, and he's like he's a grown man. And so there was probably some tension, you know, because a lot of her family members was at the wedding, but not his family. And that was like, that's not good. And here's the interesting thing. They were so close. They were such a close knit family. And I get it. You're not always going to agree on things. You're not always going to agree on the person, y- you know, your, um, your kid gets married to. But still, feel like, weddings, different events like that, like babies being born or something like that. She should just bury the hatchet. But here's something interesting there. So when Kobe Bryant won his first championship with the Lakers, he hugged his dad, similar to, how he won in high school. So it's interesting. There's a famous photo of Kobe Bryant, and he has this cool Lakers jacket on. He has the trophy. He's in the shower room, right? And it's a famous picture. It gets so many people redo it and take it as their own, but we don't know the the whole story behind that. Usually, when you win championships, you got all this champagne and all this. There is a very big difference. His dad was not there when he won another championship. So it's kind of like he idolized his dad, right? Kobe idolized his dad. He wanted to be like his dad. He wanted to restore the good name, the good Bryant name, because there was Joe Bryant, the NBA player, but then he went to Italy. So he wanted to make his dad proud and great. And so after the championships, the high school championship and the Lakers championship, right? There's hugs. But then the wedding happens. The family's not there. And then you win another Lakers championship and the family isn't there. Your dad isn't there so you guys can hug and embrace. And I just thought that was very big, very telling. And it's a little disappointing to me. But so fast forward to part two. Part two is very, 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 very big. Very, very big. because part two, and if you don't want to hear about this, I won't go over a ton of it. It wasn't my favorite part either. Part two dealt a lot with the Colorado, Colorado sexual assault case. They talked a little bit about the high rise of Kobe, right? But they mainly talked about, they did talk about the three-peat and, Kobe wanting to be the best girl dad ever. And what they would talk, T Mac and him would talk about not letting their daughters date certain uh, uh, guys and how old it would be. You know, they did talk about how he wanted to be the best, right? And they talked about his clean image, the teen idol. He was everywhere, magazines, all over the TV. He was proudly on your favorite television show, making a cameo appearance. But the same people that was around him before was not around him, right? And so the sexual, this is when the they talk they start talking about the arrest, right? And everybody was shocked. They're like, Kobe Bryant is arrested. They're like, what? Kobe Bryant? Because he's never been in trouble. He's everybody's hero. They're like, hey, this is my cow and son's hero, right? Everybody was shocked, right? And throughout part two, they was showing victim statements. You could hear Kobe Bryant's phone call with the police. You could see a lot of tension videos where, Vanessa Bryant is like squeezing, Kobe's hand, like trying to be there for him. So they talk about how Kobe Bryant went to this hotel and he got a tour of the hotel and he hugged the hotel worker and kissed the hotel worker. Um, what we know for sure is Kobe Bryant cheated on his wife. There's two sides. There's the hotel worker side who say he raped her. There's Kobe's side that says it was consensual. We don't know. Only God knows, right? They they had this phone call where Kobe was talking to the police. And at first he said no. He said no because he's concerned about his wife. He's like, because he's concerned. Maybe the wife leaves him, right? Then he says yes. He did have consensual sex with her, right? And their their stories do not add up. The only part that adds up is Kobe Bryant had his hands around her neck. They both said those things. But Kobe is saying Kobe did at there was like a conference about how he feels terrible and that he did this to his wife and there was even people saying, oh, the only reason why Vanessa stayed with him is because of that big diamond ring that he bought her, and it was all over the tabloids. Not only was that all around the tabloids, they showed a lot of parodies, and now you have memes, but before there were memes, a lot of people did parodies, and they showed SNL clips a little bit. But Kobe had the best lawyer you could get, right? The best lawyer you could get. Kobe's attorney declined to be a part of this documentary, right? But something that I noticed is the girl went through with it, but then eventually she dropped the case. And here's the part that I thought was interesting. After she dropped the case, the numbers of like sexual assault, you know, cases dropped because nobody was admitting to anything. So I guess the county was called Eagle County, and so a lot of claims were dropped after she dropped the case. Because I guess a lot of people probably felt like, well, if she can't go through it, maybe I can't go through it. And that's why they were even talking about how a lot of people don't even come forward because nobody will believe them. But I think one of the reasons why she dropped the case is because Kobe had the best lawyer you could get. And she probably thought she could handle it. Then the lawyer, who was a woman, man, just so you wasn't supposed to say her name in court, but the lawyer continuously did it, right? So they were playing hardball, right? And she would be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. That was my mistake." But she kept doing it. So the hotel worker kept getting death threats, right? Her family had to, you know, move, and I'm pretty sure she probably doesn't even have the same name. I don't know her name. I was just little when this happened. I wasn't following the case like that. So I don't know her original name, but I bet she doesn't have it anymore because she probably had to change her name after that. And uh, and so she wasn't a part of the documentary either. Only her attorney. Her attorney was a part of the documentary talking, and she was a 19-year-old girl at the time, so she was young and she probably was scared and all those things. Um, and I'm pretty sure both of them were scared. Kobe's career on the line, wife, kids, but he had a ton of support. Even there was a Teen Choice Awards. He got the best male athlete or something. And he showed up at the Teen Choice Awards. I don't know if I would have shown up at the Teen Choice Awards during this trial, but he showed up. He got lots of love. A lot of people was saying she's just a hotel worker. She's lying. She probably just want money. But there were some people that was like, yeah, I believe her because a lot of athletes think they can do whatever they want. They have money, they have fame. So there's two sides, but there was a ton of media and cameras. And I think at the end of the day, with all the death threats, that's why she probably dropped it. But they also digged into the victim's history. So they digged into her history. And when I mean by history, I mean history. Um they was I don't know the girl's life, but they were making it seem like she was a party girl, that she slept with three men at the same time or something like that, and she just wants attention. And they were saying that she had previous suicide attempts and she did drugs and all this. And so no wonder she dropped the case, right? They was playing hardball, right? Um, Something that was interesting though. Here's something interesting. They said Kobe Bryant's parents was not there in court. And that was interesting because I there was a lot of, you know, if your child is going through this hard time, right? He's saying he's being accused of something he didn't do. You think you would show up for them, but well, I guess, hey, they weren't at the wedding, they weren't at court. You would think, but the Bryant family still has some issues that they need to work out. Um, something that I think happened was she did a rape kit, and the evidence said, hey, yeah, this is scars, this has trauma. And so I'm like, this is very bad because if you have scars and trauma, you know, the scars and the trauma would say, okay, you were raped, right? And I know some people, they have their differences of opinion of what happened. I'm not here to say what happened. Only God knows. Only God is going to deal with what truly happened. But I remember Kobe Bryant did write a letter um about everything that happened, like a letter to, the woman and a letter to fans. So also what happened is this. This is what also happened. After he dealt with court, right? Dealt with the civil suit, that same day he had a Laker game, right? And a lot of his Laker teammates were behind him, right? He had a Laker game and he played and he hit a game winner. And then I think some people didn't like it because the announcers were framing it like he went through adversity. They're like, hey, everything he went through in court today, he overcame by hitting this game winner. And I guess some people didn't like it. But after you know, the allegations and the silver suit, after that was over, the Lakers gave Kobe Bryant 7-year contract, right? And Kobe Bryant got a performance coach because he wanted to embrace the hate, all the rage, right? And that's how the Black Mamba was born. He saw Kill Bill, and if you guys seen Kill Bill, you guys know, hey, Kill Bill, Black Mamba, the snake, and how the snake has all these attributes, and it's lethal, right? And it's very dangerous, right? And so that's how he got his alter ego. And if you watch Muse, the documentary, the Kobe documentary Muse, which talks about, how Black Mamba was born, you know, it was basically born to all this negative attention. How can how can you use it to really use it for your good? And so after that, after he created Black Mamba, that's when he started to win without Shaq, and he won MVPs, and he won with Paul Gasol, right? That's when Gianna was born, right? And so it starts to talk about. It also talks about him putting on big performances like the time he scored 81. That was afterwards, right? They also talked about the Redeem team, right? And how he joined the Redeem team after, to help USA win the gold, right? And this is after the Black Mamba stuff, right? This is after the alter ego was born. So here's a quote that he said. He says, how to turn darkness into greatness. How to challenge the villain and unleash the hero. Because a lot of people still viewed him as the villain, right? And I think this is the whole point of the documentary. To show the different parts of Kobe, right, that aren't known, but also to show that he had different sides of him, right? In different parts of his life. And here's something that it's almost like he was multiple people. So when he had tore his Achilles, right? Achilles is a hard injury to overcome. Now, of course, medicine gets better over time, but it's still a hard injury to overcome. But he was very sad, and he was sad, and he was crying, and he was breaking all these things, right? And some people would say that's Black Mamba right there, showing all that rage, right? But then, knock knock, your kids, right? Your kids are here. And then he immediately switches to daddy, right? So he's one way on the court, Black Mamba, but then he's Kobe daddy, daddy Kobe, girl dad, right? He made girl dad popular. He didn't invent it, but he made it very popular. Um, and that's when, part three becomes in effect because part three is all about his, post NBA aspirations. And it talks about Gianna, right? And so, but they also talked about a lot of drama. His parents were selling his memorabilia. And he was like, no, you have no right to sell my memorabilia. And this just continues to where we started from. Great family. Then, gets to the league, marries Vanessa, problems start happening, right? And so he was Kobe was able to win, was able to win. There were some things that they could not sell. But there were some things they still could sell. He reached a settlement with his parents, right? And he sued his parents, but he reached a settlement and ultimately he won. But once again, and T Mac was talking about how his family was never like that. Like Kobe's family was never like that. The side of his family, Kobe's family, that T Mac always saw was a big happy family, right? And they was like, so T Mac, did you talk uh, to Kobe about reconciliation? And T Mac laughed and said, no, he avoided that. He did not talk to Kobe about, he stayed away from those combos. He probably knew, like, don't get into it with Kobe about his parents. Um, because Kobe expressed to his, um, you know, certain friends that he was lonely, right? Because the fame made him lonely. It's like, who do you trust? You have all this money, and a lot of people take care of their parents. Once they get a boatloads of money, they made it to whatever they made it from, whatever dream they accomplished, they give back to their parents, right? And Kobe did give back to his parents, but the issue is how much do you give? Do you just give it anytime they want it? Is it a limit? Is it a negotiable thing? And I think that's another part of it where it gets tricky. It's very tricky. Even after his death, there was issues with Vanessabryant and how much should she give Kobe Bryant's parents, and there was just a big issue with that. And so finances do can break up families, and I don't think that was the main reason why they was, you know, not close anymore, but I think that had some type of issue to deal with it. But he said to his friend, Kobe said to his friend, basketball made it all worth it because because it's like if you have to deal with all this, you know, you know, all the media attention, and you never know who to trust. But basketball is what, really made it all worth it because he really loved basketball. He really loved the game, practices, crowds, the workouts. He would work out before your other favorite player would work out in the morning. So if your favorite player would work out at 11 a.m. in the morning, Kobe Bryant, Kobe Bryant is probably going to his second workout by the time your favorite player is going to his first. That's how he was. And he was always thinking, what am I going to do after I retire? And so he, you know, talked to his old high school English teacher, and she was in the documentary too. And that's how Dear Basketball sort of started. And it kind of all started with, you know, he likes to write, right? He likes to story tell. And he talked about in Dear Basketball, he talks about what basketball means to him. And w- when talking about retirement, he didn't want the whole old man retirement, you're aging and all that. He didn't want to deal with all that. But he contacted a person that I didn't even know, but you hear a lot of his music. So his name is John Williams. He's an Oscar winner music composer, right? And when people was like, Kobe, you want a story tell? People was like, they didn't believe that he could do it because they're like, you're a basketball player. They didn't believe he could do it. And Kobe Bryant was like, he does this. He wants the best. So John Williams, I didn't know him, but when I the things that he did, you guys are gonna know. So he's made music for Harry Potter, Star Wars, Home Alone, and more and more and more. So the music that you guys hear in Kobe Bryant's Dear Basketball, that is John Williams. Now, it's an animated short. It has a lot of inspiration. But this is what else that I didn't know, but as a 90s kid, you sort of do know. So, it's a man named, I may not pronounce this right, Glenn King. He worked with a lot of Disney animation. So, Tarzan, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Mermaid. These are the guys that worked on Dear Basketball with Kobe. And so you guys know Kobe Bryant won an Oscar, right? So Kobe Bryant wrote Dear Basketball, but the music and the animation, this is where it's from. And I was like, wow, I didn't know these guys' names, but I've watched a lot of their movies, and music, and. So they went behind the scenes about, the whole process. And Kobe Bryant was acting as if this was like an NBA game finals game 7, right? He wanted it to be great. And that's sort of how Kobe Bryant is. If you're going to do something, be great at it. And, that's one of the things that he does. Be better every day, Mamba mentality, right? And so all these three guys, they talked about, you know, the inspiration, the artistry, the magic, the discovery as a kid, right? They was blending in Kobe Bryant the kid and Kobe Bryant the adult, and they was blending it in, and it was all about imagination and wonder and reliving your childhood and those memories. Cause everybody says, hey, adulthood, it's not much, it's not what I thought it would be. everybody wants to relive those childhood days where you would go outside and play different games and play with your friends and be home before the lights come on, playing cans and basketball, going to the playgrounds, right? And so, oh, there was a game, Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was talking about the different movements that he makes on the basketball court and how he turned his body and hit a game winner. And the guys were talking about it and it was like, how did you make this shot? How did you make that shot? And Kobe Bryant is like, that goes back to my childhood days where they would ride their bikes and there would be a rock and they would have to throw the rock at this light pole, right? While riding a bike, right? I never played that game. I don't know if you guys have, but that's how he made the shot in an awkward motion. And so that's kind of how it was like. So the adult Kobe, right, remembered what it was like to be a kid riding a bike. And that helped him make a basketball game winner. And that was sort of what Dear Basketball was all about. The adult in him saying, Dear Basketball, thank you for all that was a kid. And a lot of times when you grow up and you become like an athlete or an actor, you always wish, like, hey, I want to be this. But there's things that come with it that you don't want. You don't want the fame, you don't want the fortune. You kind of want your personal life is kind of taken, right? You fell in love with basketball, not the money, the cars, the clothes, the attention. You fell in love. You were just a kid playing a sport or playing a game, whatever. Here's something that was interesting. The Me Too movement became very big, and when they found out that Kobe Bryant was nominated for an Oscar, they wanted the Oscars to, take it away. It didn't happen. Kobe Bryant won an Oscar, right? He was the only NBA player to do it, and he was shocked. He didn't think he was gonna win. He was very shocked. Um, and so he won. And part three, it talks a lot about the process of, storytelling, writing Dear Basketball, and all that. But it also talks about Gigi. And if you guys know Gigi, Gigi is the second daughter, and the daughter that passed away in the helicopter crash. And a lot of people was excited about her because she was going to be big for women's basketball. She was eventually going to be in the WNBA and take over, right? I believe she would be in college. This might be her first or second year in college if she was still around. But they talked about how Gigi one day was like, "Hey, Dad, I want to play basketball." And you know what he said to her? He said, "Well, you got to get up at 4 a.m." And she was like, "Okay." So I feel like she already kind of had that Mamba mentality because usually kids don't want to, they want to be great, but they don't want to wake up at 4 a.m. and do it. I don't. Uh, but, um, they would practice, right? And you kind of see how the Mamba Academy was born and how he's coaching girls. And T Mac was like he went to a practice um and he was like, they're doing pro like practices. This is structured like the pose, right? And they would do things like the triangle, right? Phil Jackson did the triangle. Um, you know, and some people say it's kind of difficult, but he was doing it with young girls and teaching them the fundamentals. And he was big on the W. And this is when Terrell Swoops, big WNBA legend, She got in the documentary and was talking about Gianna and how Kobe Bryant made the orange WNBA sweater famous because he would always show up to the games with Gianna and especially LA Sparks games, right? And he believed in a lot of women believed that they could play with the men too. Um, naming the if you guys know a little bit about the WNBA, Jewel Lloyd, her nickname is Gold Mamba, right? They would work out together. Sabrina Ionescu and Diana Taurasi was doing speeches at, um, Kobe Bryant's celebration at the, you know, Staples Center. Diana Taurasi's name is White Mamba, nickname is White Mamba, right? Because they're great shot makers. But he inspired and worked out with a lot of women. Oh, Nafisa Collier. She plays for the Minnesota Lynx. And there's uh there's footage of her, playing against Gigi. And there's even footage. There's not footage, but there's pictures of Candace Parker and Sabrina Ionescu training the youngest two that were just real little when, Kobe passed. And I'm like, hey, maybe they might fall in love with basketball. We don't know. But here's something Gigi said. Fans are like, you need a boy, you need a boy, you need a boy. When are you having a boy so you can continue this legacy? Gigi says, no, I got this. And I thought that was so awesome because, a lot of people are like, oh, you need a boy, to be that junior. But they showed footage of Gigi and her moves, moved just like Kobe Bryant. And, they always went to the games together. They always practiced together. And I felt like she had that mentality already. And, you know, these moves looked familiar. And T Mac and Kobe would be talking on the phone and Kobe Bryant would send footage of Gigi and would be like, hey, does this look familiar? Does this move look familiar? And he he was big on developing the basketball skills, but he was also big on, and this is huge, of kids' emotional development, their confidence. Because, I wish I had confidence at a young age. So he was big on that. And something that was interesting, they were talking about, the death of Kobe Bryant and Gigi and everyone who died on that helicopter. A lot of people's reactions. A lot of people's reactions were like, no, stop playing. This isn't real life. Because they kind of thought that he was invincible and it was kind of shocking, right? And there was a lot of crying, numbness, and I I believe Kobe Bryant's English teacher called T Mac. Someone called T Mac and said that Kobe Bryant had died and stuff. T Mac had to hang up the phone. He could not he could not control himself. He could not talk. And I think that's kind of what happens when something shocking happens. Swoop said the world stood still. And there was a bit, and it even came on TV there when a lot of people and even fans were at the Staples Center and they were doing different speeches. Like Michael Jordan did a speech like "Piece of me will never be the same" because Jordan, you know, Jordan said that Kobe was like a little brother to him because their games were almost very similar, very very similar. And then And Jordan would give Kobe advice. And so that was a lot about that was part 3, a lot about what you're going to do after retirement. They definitely showed the 60-point game, his last game. They definitely showed that. Wanted to show people, hey, I still got it. Wanted to show his girls, I still got it. And that's the last time he's playing. But a lot of people were talking about, you know, after he retired, they said that this was the happiest Kobe Bryant was because he got to coach his daughter. He got to do something else other than play basketball. They're like, since winning is not on the table, I get to focus on a lot of other things. So they said that Kobe's happiness and his human side showed more post retirement, right? When the winning didn't matter anymore. The workouts, the training, being better than everybody else, getting inside the opponent's mind, that trash talk, right? When all that was out the window, people said you saw him smile more. And the interesting thing was the attorney of the hotel worker, he said that not everybody is all good, not everybody is bad. That's not real life. He doesn't know if Kobe Bryant changed, right? He doesn't know. He said maybe he did. And so that was what this documentary was about. Um, the different sides of Kobe, different things you knew from his that you didn't know from his childhood, from high school, from Italy, from the early days with the Lakers, post Lakers when they kept losing all the time, the Colorado arrest, the family being so close knit to not even being at the wedding and court and all those things. And, you know, it was about winning, losing, the good, the bad, the ugly. It was about showing different sides, the light side, the human side, the dark side, the core moral, and they were talking about you know, how to not take life for granted. Especially Kobe was talking about that. Um, Something that stands out is Kobe Bryant talking about Mamba mentality and how you shouldn't fear failing, you know. But what I did like about the ending was they showed a lot of the artwork. A lot of the artwork, a lot of people were inspired by Kobe. They showed a lot of fans talking, a lot of fans gathering around Staples Center and having the candles and all the signed memorabilia they got from Kobe and the jerseys. And they showed a lot of the artwork, a lot of the murals. Murals to this day are, the big Luca trade. They there was just a new mural up of, maybe the last time Luca and Kobe saw each other. And now it's a new mural. And so they showed a lot of the murals, um, showed a lot of the pictures of his children, and because I think he did want to be a better person for his children, so his children don't have to read anything bad about him, right? So I think you know post career, yeah, maybe he was more happy, more all about, hey, training his daughter, and being the best girl that he could be. And the only the main bad thing is Joe Bryant died, right, last year of a stroke. And something that I think is a little sad is I don't think they ever made up. I don't think Kobe Bryant and his mom and his dad ever made up. And, you know, high school, you know, as a kid, things were fine. In high school, everything was fine. It wasn't until he got to the Lakers, it could have been that stage from boyhood to manhood. And he married, without a prenup to Vanessa Bryant. That's when things went bad. And then not showing up to the wedding, not showing up to court, and, selling memorabilia and, suing. That's the bad part about it was I don't think they ever got any closure, right? I don't think they ever got to reconcile. And I think that's a big thing. I think while you're here on earth, you gotta reconcile because you never know. You never know what's gonna happen. Because you might think, yeah, I'm just gonna wait till I'm old and gray. You can't wait. Um, and I think I also, somebody that I did like to see toward the end, Jackie McCullum, who's like a journalist. She was talking a lot more toward the end of the doc, and I do like her. Um, Sometimes she's on ESPN talking, but I feel like they mostly work for the Celtics. I'm not sure if she done switched, but that's another person that I really liked. But they definitely talked a lot about legacy, right? And how you're going through darkness. How do you use that darkness to fuel it, right, to your benefit? And I think this documentary was good, but because, like, I feel like overall, there was different emotions. There was sad. There was like, you know, there was happiness. There was a lot of. I really liked the clips. Really liked the clips and the photos. Definitely liked people and their different opinions. Um, People that really knew him through his childhood and through his adulthood. I do think they could have did a little better job at covering certain parts, but since it was three different parts, they probably cut a lot of stuff out. Um, I am looking forward to what Vanessa Bryant does. I feel like she does a lot with Mambacita, and I I don't know what else Kobe Bryant was gonna do if he never passed, right? So maybe she finishes it, right? But yeah, I would like a biopic, but when you do a biopic, you do have to address the good, the bad. And I didn't really like part two, but I understood why it had to be in there. And like I said, like everybody's opinion is different. And like I said, God's gonna take care of that, you know, innocent or guilty, God's gonna take care of it. But yeah, you almost think of what if, like, what if my biggest thing is like, what if family would have reconciled before the death, right? That's what I wish. And of course, you kind of wanted to see Gigi in the WNBA, but that's not really what God planned it, and like Vanessa Bryant said at the celebration, well, they called it a celebration, sort of Kobe at the Staples Center was God knew they had to go together. Because sometimes certain people can't take the other apart. Um, so some people die together, some people may lose somebody and then they can't really take it and their life goes a little differently. Only God knows. So they went together. But um yeah, it I think you're gonna experience different emotions watching this because it's not just a happy go lucky documentary, but it's not and also sad documentary as well. You're gonna go through different emotions of awe and you're gonna be like, aw, you know, different emotions and but I think what you mostly learn from this documentary is how somebody can, the ups and downs in your life, how are you gonna take it? Are you gonna use it as fuel? Are you gonna use the negative as fuel and bottle it up and help that chase your dreams? Or are you going to let the negativity and darkness beat you down? And it's also about life is not always like this. There's going to be like this and this and then this and then this, and there's going to be different levels. And I think Kobe Bryant was different people at different times in his life, right? And sometimes he was two people at the same time, but he just switched it up. And I think that's how a lot of people are. We don't show everybody certain sides. Only certain people get to see every side of us. And then some people get to see one side, and some people get to see the other. And sometimes one side, you kill that side, and you create a whole new one based on what happens in your life. Um, but yeah, the only thing that I wish is I wish that Kobe Bryant and his family would have reconciled before that happened. But it also shows how like Kobe Bryant, man, United States, overseas, it don't matter. He inspired everybody, even people that speak different languages, different ages, different races. He truly inspired them. And he touched a lot of lives, and everybody was looking forward to that next chapter of Kobe. What are you going to do now, Kobe? And you kind of got to see a little bit with Dear Basketball of what he was going to do. He was going to do different things for kids, to inspire the kids through basketball storytelling. And maybe, Vanessa Bryant continues that. Um, Maybe one of his other daughters does basketball. Or maybe they do a whole another different sport. You don't gotta do basketball. Maybe they not into sports at all. Right? But overall I think life is complicated and you got to see the complicated life of Kobe Bryant. And like I said, I feel like Vanessa Bryant and his children, that is what's left of his legacy. And so now we get to see, and I'm pretty sure she's doing things behind the scenes to make sure he's never forgotten, but to also continue the work that he, left behind. But yeah, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you guys tell me your favorite part of the documentary or tell me your favorite thing about Kobe Bryant. Did you meet him? Did you watch him at a game? Or, where were you when you became a Kobe Bryant fan? Anything like that. And thank you guys for sticking with me this long. If you have, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe and stay ballin'. Peace.